So at this point, this create event route is protected, and therefore only authenticated users can create events. Now, as mentioned before, we of course also should protect the update and delete event routes here. Now, of course, we could now copy this code here, where we check the token and so on, from create event and also paste this into update event. But doing so would be rather cumbersome. We'd have to repeat that over and over again for all the different routes that should be protected. A better solution is to add a so-called middleware, an extra function that basically runs in the middle of the request, before the actual final request handler becomes active. And for that, I'll add a new folder here in the project. I'll name it middlewares, even though we'll only have one in there. And I'll add a new file, auth.go. Now this file will therefore belong to the package middlewares. So same name as the folder. And then in there, I want to have a function authenticate, starting with a capital A so that we can also use it outside of this package. And this function here should then get this gin context, or to be precise, a pointer to that gin context, just as my route handler functions got it. Because it's essentially the same kind of function, just one that, as mentioned, will run in the middle of a request. So we get this context, and now I'll paste this token verification code into this function. So that code which we wrote in the create event handler function, this code at the beginning here. I pasted this here into authenticate to authenticate the incoming token. Now we need the HTTP package to set these status codes and the utils package to verify the token. But now we will also need to tweak this function here a little bit. Because now I no longer wanna set my response to this and then return here, because now it's important to keep in mind that, as mentioned, this request handler will be executed in the middle of a request. And actually the way gin works and the way we will register this function soon is such that other request handlers after this handler here would still run. And therefore we would essentially try to send multiple responses if we also send a response here and here. Instead, what we should do is use the special abort with status JSON method that's provided by the gin package on this context. Because this does what the name implies. It aborts the current request, so to say, or the current response generation, and sends this response. And no other request handlers thereafter will be executed. And that's what we need here and here. To make sure that if something goes wrong here, we stop and no other code on the server runs. Now, if we make it to the end of this authenticate function though, if we got a valid token, we also should call a special function on context, and that's the next function. And this will then ensure that the next request handler in line will execute correctly.